Welcome back, everybody. Some of you have made requests that I do a video about the log tape I use. Today we're going to do just that. If you were to ask some of the loggers around here what kind of tape they use, they might get a little confused. They might have a reaction something like, "What? You mean there's more than one kind?" Here in the Pacific Northwest, the Spencer log tape is our go-to tape. It's just what we use. And for good reason. This is the tape you see me using in my videos. As you can see, it looks well used. That's because this is the same tape my dad bought me around 30 years ago when he taught me how to scale and buck logs. 30 years later, I'm still using it. That kind of longevity and durability is one of the reasons why we just don't know of any other kind of tape. In our opinion, there's no reason to. Supposedly there's another brand that's supposedly good, but we Northwest loggers have such loyalty to our Spencer tapes, the idea of switching to another brand would just be sacrilege. The body's made of aircraft grade aluminum. Most of the inner parts are stainless steel. It's been a while since I've had one apart, but if I remember right, I think the gears were made out of brass. I could be wrong about that though. They're durable, they're built to last. They're made to operate well even in harsh outdoor conditions. Loggers need these to be able to work well in rain, snow, mud, everything. And that's what they're made to do. It has a clip you can attach to your belt loop or your wedge pouch or whatever you want to attach it to. The numbers, they're easy to read. I use the kind that's just feet and inches. Feet are in red and inches are in black. After every foot it starts over 1 through 12. So you go 2 foot, 1 through 12, 3 foot, 1 through 12. Okay, it's numbered 1 through 11, but the next one's 12. You know what I mean. The reason the inches start over after every foot, instead of accumulating like with a normal tape measure, is because the mills require a little extra trim on each log. For example, if you cut a 32-foot log, they're going to want a few inches extra. The amount can vary with different mills. For example, if they want 10 inches of trim, you would cut 32 feet 10 inches. And the way these are laid out, it just makes it easy to see how many inches of trim you have. There are different types of tape refills for these. You can get them in metric. A common tape that the foresters use is one that has diameter scale on one side. And then on the other side, it'll just have the regular feet and inches. But the diameter scale, what that's for, you can wrap this tape around a tree, and the number it shows will be the diameter of the tree. It already has pi factored into it. Those are good for cruising timber, for doing surveys, and all the fun things that foresters get to do. But for a dedicated log tape, I prefer to have feet and inches on both sides. The same on both sides. Because when you're out measuring logs, you usually have your saw in one hand, you're running the tape with the other through the brush a lot of the times, and then you don't have to turn the tape over to make sure you're on the right side, because both sides are going to be the right side. If you do both kinds of work, you can keep one kind on one and put the other on your other tape. Although this one doesn't have the other kind, this is just my grandfather's old tape that I keep around as a spare. Well, why would you need an extra tape? As good as they are, they can break down. And until you get it fixed, it's good to have a spare. These tapes are made out of a thin metal. They have to be in order to bend and do what they do. Over time, if you use one enough, eventually it's going to break. It's just the way it is. But you can get refills for them. They're not expensive. Our local saw shops always carry these in stock. I think they charge about $15. I've seen them for $12 and change online. Very easy to replace. You don't have to take it apart. You can do it in just a few minutes. Or you can repair them. There are riveting tools you can get where you can rivet these tapes back together and you're back in business. If you use one enough, eventually the coil spring inside is going to break. But those are inexpensive. Our local saw shops carry those. They're a little bit more difficult to replace, but not too bad. And again, that's another thin piece of metal that's always flexing, and eventually it's going to break. For as long as I've been using this one, I think I've only replaced it one time. When you get a new tape, it's just going to have a loop on the end. You can get accessories for those. You can get hooks that hook around the end of the log. You can get a spike that you can push into the log. Or you do what a lot of us do and you just bend a horseshoe nail to make a spike. This one's covered in tape, so it's hard to see it. Here's a broken off end. I peeled the tape back so you can see how that's done. With the horseshoe nail, you can adjust how it holds in the log by bending the spike forward or back. If you find that it's pulling out of the log when you don't want it to, you can bend and angle the spike back a little bit so it's more of a hook, so it holds a little better. If you're finding it's too hard to pull out of the log when you want it to release, well, you angle it forward a little bit. You might be wondering why I have tape on here. Well, there's a few reasons for that. Unless you get a kink in the tape back here somewhere, which you try not to do, it's most likely to break somewhere close to the end. This tape gives it support, makes it last a lot longer. I use electrical tape or electrician's tape or sparky tape or whatever you want to call it. And about here or so, I start slowly tapering it back, thinner as I go back this way. That way there's not an abrupt spot where it has support, then suddenly it doesn't have support, because that's the spot where it would likely break. But if you use one enough, even if you tape it, eventually it's going to break somewhere. Just like this one did, somewhere above the tape. Maybe if this one was taped as much as I did this one, it would have lasted longer. I used to use black tape, but I started using colored tape because when this breaks, this is going to end up in the wood somewhere. And chances are there's going to be slash and debris around it. And black is not always the easiest color to find. A brighter color is probably going to be easier to find. Blue is just what I had on hand. Another reason for the tape is this horseshoe nail just sits loose on that loop. A lot of times you're going to have your saw in one hand and you're grabbing this with one hand with gloves on, and you have to manipulate that to get it in the right position so you can press it into the wood. Well, the tape holds it in place. Easy to grab, it's pointed in the right direction. Also, having the tape on it helps it stick out a little bit more. You can adjust that. It makes it easier to grab it, especially with gloves. You just grab it, your spike's pointed in the right direction, and off you go. I use the 50-foot tape. It's the model 950. I think this is the most common one for logging. They have 75-foot models, they have 100-foot. I think they have them even longer than that. For those of us who don't deal with logs longer than 35 feet, the 50-foot tape is just perfect. It's rare that we would need to measure anything more than 50 feet. The smaller, lighter tape is really all we need. But if you're going to be commonly working with logs that are over 40 feet, close to 50 feet, you might want to go to the 75-foot tape. These will measure a log up to 50 feet, but once you get it out to that 50-foot point, you might get distracted or forget about it and take a couple more steps. When you pass that 50-foot point, your tape's at your side and you're going to be startled because it's going to go wzzz as your tape just broke. And you're going to look back and you're going to see 50 feet of broken tape laying on the ground. The 75-foot tape would prevent that. When this end of the tape breaks, it makes a different and more dramatic sound. A lot of times it happens after you stick this into the end of the log, you start walking down the log to measure it, you stop paying attention to the tape because you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes it'll break as you're pulling it out, but a lot of times it breaks when you tug on it to pull it out of the log. Now you don't notice that it breaks because you're on the other end of the tape. When you do notice it, it's when you're startled, when you start hearing and feeling flap, 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 this flapping sound as the broken off tape is spinning around uncontrollably inside. And depending on how and where you wear your tape, it's all happening right up against your body. At that point, you let out a few swear words because your tape just broke. Then you look around to make sure nobody saw how startled you were. Have you ever been walking along and looked down and whoa, the rattlesnake? Doesn't even have to be a rattlesnake, just any snake. Well, the reaction to that is pretty similar to the reaction of the spinning around end of your tape flopping around at your side. If any of you have been a logger for a while, you probably know what I'm talking about. Good times. I'm not sponsored by Spencer, they're not paying me for this. But if you want to support the channel, I'll put an Amazon link in the description. If you buy one of these or anything else on Amazon through that link, I'll get a very small commission. If you don't want to support the channel, just do a search for Spencer 950 log tape. Or if you go to your chainsaw dealer, logging supply, forestry supply, any local company like that, they probably have these, and they probably also have the parts for them. The next time I break a tape, or if I have to do anything to this, any kind of repair or maintenance, I'll try to remember to do a video about it. I have a few tips and tricks I'll be able to pass along. I appreciate you watching my video. If you've got even the slightest amount of value out of it, if you would, hit the like button for me. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.